known that he wasn't going to do well in New Hampshire.
I talked with former Deputy National Press Secretary of the Democratic Party, Jose Aristimuño, about what this means for Joe Biden as candidates now focus on Nevada and South Carolina. Plus,
I think it's been clear for a long time there is not a really national security reason for being in Afghanistan.
Senator Rand Paul highlights the ongoing issues with keeping troops in Afghanistan and his efforts to bring our soldiers home. I also talk one-on-one with Representative Mark Meadows about his plans once he leaves Congress.
The administration needs some help to understand the dysfunction of Congress. And so if I can help with that, especially from an oversight standpoint.
That and so much more.
Those cops, we have a crime in minority neighborhoods. And the way you get the guns out of kids' hands is to throw them against the wall and frisk them.
Right now in America, this week. Welcome to America This Week. It's the hottest new political show broadcast across the country. I'm Eric Bolling, and my goal is to hold the mainstream media and the powerful accountable by following the money and asking the tough questions they're just not used to being asked. So violence is the subject of the memo tonight, and violence has spread into our politics faster than the coronavirus on a cruise ship. Citizens are being violently attacked by the angry left-wing mob. Antifa started this trend in 2016 with their protests that turned violent in Portland, Seattle, and other liberal strongholds. The targets were what they called fascists. In truth, the targets of Antifa attacks were and are primarily Trump supporters. Over time, the attacks got more frequent and more violent. Watch these recent Antifa attacks on innocent civilians, unsuspecting citizens, conservative journalists, and cops. That was just a small sample. Scary stuff. Cops used to have the respect of the people they serve and protect, but not anymore. At least not in the liberal neighborhoods of Oakland, Portland, Seattle, New York, Chicago, and unfortunately many more cities. To make matters worse, because of the mainstream media, they're heavily anti-Trump, there's been little to no coverage of these attacks, but they're getting worse and more violent and more widespread. Just take this past week, for example. In the span of just a week, a GOP voter registration booth was rammed by a man in a van. The booth had 6 volunteers working when Gregory William Lowell Tim tried to mow them all down. Or in New York City, a gunman entered a police precinct and tried to assassinate cops. Or in Portland, this happened. A social worker turned violent thug threatened to kill a man simply because the man was conservative.
I'm gonna catch you when all the cameras aren't around, and I'm gonna you up.
Oh, quiet.
No, I am.
But I disagree with you.
I actually want you there.
For what?
Because you're people.
Why?
Violence cannot be the new normal in politics. Who can forget Steve Scalise was shot multiple times by a Bernie bro while on a ball field just because Scalise was a Republican? And just a few days ago, Maine Senator Susan Collins has gone public with the fact that she's been receiving credible death threats since voting to acquit President Trump of impeachment. And as we go into this election year, our politics are more divided than ever. You know, they say politics is downstream of culture. Now think of that for a second as I show you a controversial new movie set for release. It's called The Hunt, and it's a fictional story about a group of elite liberals who literally hunt down and kill deplorables. And we all know deplorables are Trump supporters. It's also been said life imitates art. So liberals hunt down and kill deplorables. This movie was so controversial, it was pulled last August after pushback from conservatives, suggesting left-wing groups like Antifa may use it as a playbook against Trump supporters. Now, however, Universal, owned by the parent company that owns NBC, has rethought that idea, and the film will drop March 13th. A couple of things about that. Would NBC Universal ever make a movie if the plot were reversed, where Trump deplorables hunted down and killed liberals for sport? I highly doubt that. You know where I stand. I'm a libertarian, and I believe in the First Amendment's protection of speech and art, so I really don't give a darn about this movie. That is, unless life starts imitating art and some dumb Antifa clowns get some ideas from the movie Scary world we live in, folks. Scary world. And there are now two clear frontrunners so far in the Democratic presidential race. Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders picked up 25% of the votes in the New Hampshire primary, with Mayor Pete Buttigieg trailing just slightly behind. Senators Amy Klobuchar and Elizabeth Warren round out the top four, but definitely not considered a success for the Warren campaign by any means. The big surprise, though, former Vice President Joe Biden landing in fifth place, a hard blow to his campaign after he came in fourth in Iowa. And so what do we do with these results? What do they mean for the Democratic candidates moving forward? Let's go to the former Deputy National Press Secretary of the Democratic Party, Jose Aristimuño. Welcome, Jose. How are you, friend?
Thank you, Eric. Thanks for having me on.
A couple of big things. I don't think it's any surprise that Bernie Sanders is doing well in the Northeast. He went from Iowa and then to the Northeast, Vermont, New Hampshire, which he won handily last year. Pete Buttigieg actually doing well. Let's talk about the surprises in this race so far. Amy Klobuchar on the upside surprise. And the former vice president, who was the clear frontrunner going into the start, is now in fifth place.
Sure. Look, I think Amy has put a lot of work into those states, and good for her. This is why I think the result and her hard work has paid off. I think that's promising to see. With Vice President Biden, I think we've known that he wasn't going to do well in Iowa. We've known that he wasn't going to do well in New Hampshire. His salvation, where he needs to do really, really well, it's in South Carolina, in Nevada, and obviously on Super Tuesday. To be fair to the Vice President, right? Only two states out of the 50 have competed so far.
They call these things firewalls. I'm not sure that term is even valid anymore, because anything can happen in any state. If Biden doesn't do well in South Carolina, he's been talking about South Carolina. He's been talking about the African-American, the black vote in South Carolina that he needs so badly. If he doesn't do well there, and it looks like Bloomberg is actually bubbling up on his African-American vote in South Carolina, is it time for Biden to maybe get out of the race and let someone else who's a little bit more competent take over?
I think it's too early to make that call. I respect the vice president. I think he will be a phenomenal president and a phenomenal nominee, and can certainly win over Donald Trump. We've seen that in poll after poll. But look, I think Mike Bloomberg.
Jose, I love you, brother. You and I are friends. But poll after poll were wrong in 2016. They had every single candidate, every single Democrat candidate beating President Trump or candidate Trump in 2016. He took them all out. So national polls are BS. You and I both know that. You don't think Biden has lost the step since 2016 or 2008 when Barack Obama chose him? I mean, the guy doesn't seem like the same. He's a shell of a man that he used to be. I don't mean to be mean about this, but he forgets where he is at times. He's called New Hampshire, Vermont. He's called Nevada, South Carolina. He's all over the board. Eric, it just feels like he's losing it. Am I wrong?
Look, candidates make mistakes all the time. President Trump makes mistakes every single day. He calls things for whether or not. He tweets at different people. I mean, the president does this on a daily basis. So I'm not going to get on a battle of like what mistakes Vice President Biden has done and what he hasn't done. It's not for me to make the call whether he's the best guy for the job. I think the American people will decide that as a nation. I think he will do a phenomenal job.
Okay, Jose, fine. I agree. This is not a campaign for Biden or not against Biden. Here's my question as an observer.
Sure.
And by the way, I was out there in front in 2015 before Trump ran, picking him as the winner when everyone thought I was crazy. I step back now and I look at what's going on. I look at these candidates, not what their numbers are in Iowa or New Hampshire or coming up in South Carolina. I look at them for what they are right now. It feels to me like Bernie Sanders has the control of the Democrat Party so far, and my guess is the rest of them are going to fade away. Mike Bloomberg has a lot of money. He's going to make a lot of waves on Super Tuesday. I can see this being Bernie Bloomberg going up against Trump. Who do you think could beat Trump?
That's possible. I think that's totally possible. Mike Bloomberg is set to spend $1 billion for Super Tuesday alone. $1 billion, Eric. That's unprecedented. That has never happened in the history of politics. That's a lot of money just for one day and just for a couple states. So he's going at this very hard. So for people that might think like you and say, you know what, Joe Biden doesn't have it anymore, I think they're going to look at Mike Bloomberg as the replacement.
I just have to kind of chuckle. You're with the Democrat Party for a long time, the diversity party, I guess so. And for me, the three leaders, I think most of our audience is watching. They look at Bernie Sanders, Joe Biden, and Mike Bloomberg, all white, all older men. I mean, where's the diversity in the Democrat Party?
Just because,
my friend, come on.
Yeah, go ahead.
Come on. Let's keep it real here. Julian Castro's gone.
I'm keeping it real.
They're
Just because
all
they don't
gone.
get the majority of the support,
You're down to
Eric, just
three
because they don't
viable
mean-
candidates, maybe a fourth, and they're all white.
Again, just because they don't get the majority of the support doesn't mean that we're not diverse, right? And by the way, if you look at history, let's look at history. This is not polls, by the way. This is facts. Vote after vote, Latinos come with the Democratic Party. African Americans go to the Democratic Party because they feel a heck better represented with our party than with yours. I mean, with Republicans. That's just the truth. That's just the truth. I mean, I don't know what else to tell you.
Let's put it this way. I'll give you that has been the wisdom. I won't call it the truth. I'll call it the wisdom is that the Democrat Party takes care of the minority groups maybe more so than the Republican Party in the past. But when you have Donald Trump, putting up the best unemployment numbers, the best economic numbers for the minorities, how can you take that away from Trump when the other three who are running are just older white guys? And they've done nothing to prove that they'll take care of the African American community and the Latino community.
Look, President Trump has quote unquote, maybe he helped the economy just the same way that he promised he was going to build the wall that's falling down, that Mexico was going to pay for, that they never paid for, that he was going to save healthcare. He hasn't done that. He was going to bring stability to the Middle East. He hasn't done that. So he hasn't done, I would say, at least 70% of the things he said he was going to do. He hasn't been able to keep his promises.
We're going to have to leave it there, my friend.
There's probably some independents that are having some doubts, or Republicans, whether they want to vote for him again.
Jose Aristimuño, thank you again, as always. Good debates. Thank you.
Thank you, man.
Let's go now to Senator Rand Paul from Kentucky. Senator, thank you for joining us. Some big news. You and I have lined up on this idea of getting us out of these foreign wars, Afghanistan especially. You've had a hearing recently. Tell us what your issue is. Tell us what you're trying to get Congress to do and the president.
I think the president also sees eye to eye with me on this issue as well. I came back with the president on Air Force One the other night from New Hampshire, and we had the somber sort of stop on the way. We stopped at Dover Air Force Base and we're there for a ceremony for two of our fallen soldiers. And I think the president is very affected by it. He sees the emotion of the families, and he wants to know, from his generals, what is the mission? What is the mission? What is the reason for remaining? And I'm with him. I had hearings this week called the Afghan Papers hearing, where we talked to former generals, former ambassadors about what is our mission. And I think it's been clear for a long time there is not a really national security reason for being in Afghanistan. And so I want to bring our troops home as soon as possible. I think the president does too. And I think the main thing that stops him is some of the neoconservatives in the Senate who want to stay forever, and they push back and say, oh, we can't leave. And I think that's an old-fashioned idea. I think the way you prevent terrorism, the number one thing that would have prevented 9/11 was not letting these Saudi nationals in our country. We need to be careful. Policing when they're here, what they're doing. We recently had another Saudi national shooting up pilots training. So really, we have to look long and hard at who gets the privilege of coming to our country.
Senator, a few numbers here. 18 years, over $1 trillion spent, 2,300 or so fatalities, 20,500 wounded warriors, $50 billion per year, $50 billion ongoing per year to stay in Afghanistan. You say it's time to pull out. Are you hearing, you talk about some of the neocons in the Senate, Republicans, I assume, and maybe, let me take a guess, Lindsey Graham and a couple of those. Are they hearing you?
Some are. One of the encouraging things is in our hearing yesterday, we had a former ambassador to NATO, 35-year general, and he said there were disputes and debate over this, 5 or 10 years ago in Afghanistan, and not everybody in the military thought the mission was over. He says it's uniform now. He says it's the accepted position among the generals that there is not really a mission there, and that if there's
Senator, can I stop you though? Can I stop you though?
Don't have to have.
Allow me to stop you. Was there ever a mission? I mean, the point of these Afghanistan papers exposed by the Washington Post is going back to the original, going back to the George Bush years, from Bush through Obama into Trump even. There's never been a mission. It's almost been a cover-up to hide the fact that there was never a winnable war.
In the very beginning, there was a mission, and we had a lieutenant colonel who served over there in Afghanistan. In the first year or so, we went after those who harbored or attacked us or planned the attack on 9/11. That was worthwhile, and I was for that. And that lasted really 6 months to a year. But after that, we began saying, oh, we're going to stay and build roads for you and build schools. It just doesn't work. You can't create countries out of whole cloth. And over time, we've spent $1 trillion, and there's not much to really be seen for that. And so I'm not for risking any more of our young men and women to go over there. I think the war should end as soon as possible, and I will do everything I can to try to stop it.
You know, I would agree with you 1,000,000%. Now, let's talk about the people who take you and me to task over if we were to pull out of Afghanistan, that the country, the region would fall back into the hands of Taliban or others and become, you know, a terrorism safe haven again.
Well, I asked one really important question to General Lutz and to the others yesterday, and all of them answered in the positive, all that were able to. I asked, is the Taliban a terrorist force that threatens the United States? And they all said no. They said the vast majority of Taliban fighters fight within 30 miles of their house. There is no sort of international sort of momentum for the Taliban to come and attack us in New York. They fight for their country and they fight for control. And what they fight for, I'm not for. They're for subjugation of women. They're for radical Islamism. But the people who live there have to stand up and fight them. The problem is, in the countryside, people are voluntarily supporting and accepting the Taliban to be part of their local government because the other government are drug lords, thieves, corrupt, you know, you name it. And so that's why you have to have local control. You have to have elections, and you have to let the people choose. Will there be civil war? There kind of already is civil war.
Senator,
people say, oh, you leave, there'll be civil war. Well, there already is.
I only have a minute, and I want you to tackle this question because I think this is, of the times right now, this is the most important question. Should we, and I know there's been a reach out by the Trump administration, should we be negotiating with the Taliban for an exit out of Afghanistan, yes or no?
I think we should negotiate, we should be involved, we should engage, but ultimately we should leave whether we have an agreement with the Taliban or not. I'm not so sure I trust that they will actually adhere to their side of the agreement. What I say is we should be at war and have our soldiers in a war theater when we have an interest. And I don't think we have a valid national security interest in Afghanistan. We haven't for many years now, and it's not fair. It's our fault. Congress needs to act, and the sooner the better.
I think so, too, and I think the American people are solidly behind you, Senator Rand Paul. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Eric.
Joining me now is the former chair of the Freedom Caucus, North Carolina Congressman Mark Meadows. Congressman, thank you for joining us. Boy, you are a very popular dude lately, sir. We saw that victory lap by President Trump after the impeachment went down in a flame of dust, and he called you out saying you're a great guy. Tell us how that moment felt.
Well, it felt great. Obviously, anytime you can serve your country and serve this great president, it's a good day. But it's even more remarkable that here you have the President of the United States giving other people credit for defending him, which is really what they should have been doing all along. And so it was a very moving moment. But Eric, as you know, this president has come under attack each and every day, and yet continues to accomplish things that only previous administrations have hoped of accomplishing.
And you know, he's lucky to have you. To be honest with you, you're a stalwart supporter of President Trump. That's always been obvious to me. Congressman, what, you know, so the Democrats in Congress for a year and a half had the idea that they're going to impeach the president. They just found something to do it recently. Is there any doubt in your mind that they may look for impeachment 2.0?
Well, they're already starting. I mean, they're looking at every single thing that the president has done. And this is not with legitimate tips, and it's not with legitimate oversight. But what they're doing is they're going on fishing expeditions, asking for reams and reams of documents. I think what they will do is go after cabinet members first, and then that they will recirculate and come back to the president of the United States after the November elections. They may hold off until November November of 2020, only with the anticipation that maybe they could get one of their candidates into the Oval Office. But one, I don't see that happening. Two, I don't see the Democrats being serious about anything other than impeachment and harassing the president. The things that matter the most to us, roads and bridges, prescription drug prices, making sure the economy continues, is not in the top 10 for priorities of my Democrat colleagues.
And so this doesn't happen again 2.0 the way 1.0 happened for the Republicans in the House. You guys were upset that there was not more transparency in the process in the impeachment inquiry phase, where you weren't giving much transparency as to the witnesses, not much access to the witnesses, or to be able to ask any questions of the witnesses. Will 2.0 be any different? Will you get more access?
Well, I don't know that we'll get a lot of access, but what we do have right now, we have the American people, the people that are tuned in right now watching this. We have them inherently know that this was an unfair process. When you have Adam Schiff and just a couple of people controlling who the witnesses are going to be, saying that out of 78 days, I believe it was only 71 of those days, there was not even the ability of the president's team to have a defense lawyer there to be able to call witnesses. It was already a predetermined outcome. I do believe that there's a real push in Congress to correct that. And by that, something that's very specific. We need to change our rules that says you can't impeach a president without at least some threshold of bipartisan support. Maybe it's very low. Maybe it's only 10 Republicans in this case, 10 Republicans that would have to join all the Democrats. But there needs to be some bipartisan support, or what you're going to find is each and every time they're going to weaponize the impeachment tool. They're going to use the I word to try to extract policy concessions, and that's just not the way our founding fathers set it up, Eric.
Congressman, you talk about one of the articles of impeachment was obstruction of Congress, or the Congress didn't like the way the Trump administration was working with them, and it harkens back to Roger Stone is now on the hot seat. He may go to jail. He may go to jail for a long time. There's a back and forth between the House and between the Democrats, the DOJ, and President Trump, whether or not Stone spends a lot of time or a little time in jail for lying to Congress. I'm watching those impeachment trials, and I'm seeing people lie to Congress left and right. I think a lot of those people would be in jail if that ends up being the standard. Before I go, sir, I have to ask you, you're concerned, you care about the country, you care about the president, yet you're leaving a very important seat in North Carolina. Hey, why are you leaving B? Where are you going?
Listen, I'm going to stay in the fight. I'm going to be in the fight, just fighting from a different vantage point. There's a season for everything, and I'm a big one that believes in term limits. This is my 4th term. But I've talked to the president about making sure that he gets reelected and helping him, even after that. And so we're just going to be in a different fight. But the other part of that is the administration needs some help to understand the dysfunction of Congress. And so if I can help with that, especially from an oversight standpoint, I think we can help them understand how to navigate this and make sure that they do the proper disclosures to Congress, but that they don't get used in the meantime.
Congressman Mark Meadows, we're going to leave it right there. I have an uncanny ability to see the future a little bit. I saw it with Trump. I'm going to go down the road a little bit. I'm thinking maybe a year or so, maybe just after the election or so. And I'm thinking Chief of Staff Mark Meadows. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but listen, I'll put it on record right now. Congressman, your thoughts on possibly being Chief of Staff quickly?
Obviously, if I could serve the president, whether it's in that capacity or any other, it would be a great honor to serve him and to serve our nation. We'll see what the future may hold, but no commitments yet.
All right. Well, you got my unaccountable voter, zero meat behind my vote, but you got my vote anyway. Congressman Mark Meadows, thank you. All right, ahead on America This Week, following the money trail of Hunter Biden in Ukraine, president of the Government Accountability Institute, Peter Schweitzer, releases some interesting details. Stay right here.
America, one nation, from Florida to St. Louis to Seattle. America This Week, America's fastest growing political show, delivers rough and tumble political arguments,
On the left, this new embrace of socialism.
The whole thing is ridiculous.
hard-edged opinions,
The media let Joe Biden get away with his first big lie.
They can come after me all they want, but they're going to have to kill me if they want me to stop defending the president.
tough topic debates,
Destabilization in the Middle East, more chaos and more terrorism.
Unless we get away from all of this hatred, we're going to destroy ourselves.
We have to solve the border problems.
The wall is a big chunk of what we're talking about.
America This Week reveals the topics and issues that pulse throughout America. Investigates stories revealing toxic forever chemicals in water supplies.
My family was poisoned. My child was poisoned. I have been poisoned.
Sebastian Walker, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, how's my level?
Go, 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 go.
Cartels, rape, gangs, and violence.
So you guys are both hitmen?
America This Week investigates the facts and the falsehoods and relentlessly seeks the truth on your behalf.
I'm Eric Bolling. Join me for a fascinating look at America This Week. Okay, let's go now to the president of the Government Accountability Institute and author of his newest book, Profiles in Corruption, Abuse of Power by America's Progressive Elite, Peter Schweitzer. By the way, congratulations, Peter, on the #1 spot in the New York Times bestseller list. So, Peter, last week, Rudy Giuliani, president's personal attorney, came on and told us that he not only had a link between the Ukraine government through a couple of countries into the Hunter Biden personal account, he also insinuated there may be a link. He may have evidence that there was some money that went from that exact route into Joe Biden's account somehow. Do you have any of that information?
No, I don't. I think the position here that the Attorney General Barr has taken is exactly right. Rudy Giuliani is going to be sharing information with him. He needs to vet that information. But ultimately, I think it's going to speak to finally finding out exactly what happened in Ukraine. We know that money flowed to Hunter Biden. We know that he got that gig weeks after his father, the vice president, was appointed point person on U.S. policy towards Ukraine. So hopefully this will shed the light on it. We can get to the bottom on it.
You know, Peter, Giuliani also pointed out that some of the money, some of the Burisma money, and Hunter Biden was a board member of Burisma, typically you get paid directly from the company. Giuliani pointed out that some of this money flowed through two separate bank accounts in two separate countries and then finally made its way into Hunter Biden's account. Why, if that's true, why would that be the case?
It's a great question. You probably do that only because you're either trying to obscure the money trail, maybe you're trying to hide or avoid taxes, who knows. But this speaks to a problem that Hunter Biden has. We have access to one of his JP Morgan accounts as a result of a criminal case involving his business partner. And what came out is that there was a veritable United Nations of money flowing to Hunter Biden while his father was vice president. That includes money from Swiss bank accounts, from anonymous LLCs, from Kazakh oligarchs. It's very troubling, and this sort of money trail, global money trail going to Hunter Biden at this time needs serious investigation on Capitol Hill.
You know, and our audience is going to watch this, and frankly, I sit and think about this all the time. So we're talking about things that normal, regular people who are watching, regular Americans, would likely go to jail for if proven guilty. Will we see Hunter Biden, in a defense position at some court with the risk of going to jail, actually?
Yeah, I think there is that risk, particularly if the Department of Justice confirms these documents that are being handed over. We know that DOJ is looking and talking to people in Ukraine about this material. If he broke the law, he needs to go to jail. I think this is one of the key issues that Americans are united on, whether they're left, right, and center, and that is there seems to be a different set of rules for the governing class in Washington, D.C. compared to the rest of the country. And if Hunter Biden engaged in criminal activity, he needs to be held in account.
In my opinion, what is incriminating is that when you work for a company, whether it's national or international, you get paid directly from them. That's just the way it goes. You have to pay taxes on it. There should be transparency transparency, especially if your father's the vice president at the time. But let's just say that they didn't think of that. But why in the world would money to Hunter Biden from Burisma have to take a route through several other countries? There's something that just stinks with this fish meal right now. I'm telling you, there's no reason for them not to pay Hunter directly. It went through some other channels for another reason.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. The most direct route is the most straightforward route, and if it took this path through the Baltic states and other places that are being alleged, that's a serious problem, because you're only doing that because you're trying to obscure the money trail, or you're trying to avoid some kind of compliance or tax issue.
All right, Peter Schweitzer, again, the book is called Profiles in Corruption, Abuse of Power by America's Progressively. Congratulations on that New York Times #1 bestseller list. Thank you, Peter.
95% of your murderers and murder victims fit one MO. You can just take the description, Xerox it, and pass it out to all the cops. They are male, minorities, 15 to 25.
That is newly leaked audio from former mayor of New York City and Democratic presidential candidate Michael Bloomberg defending his controversial stop and frisk plan back in 2015. We're going to hear from both sides of the aisle right here, right now. Political commentator Amisha Cross and former deputy assistant to President Trump, host of America First on Salem Radio, and author of his newly released book, The War for America's Soul, Dr. Sebastian Gorka. Amisha, got to go to you first on this. Michael Bloomberg has a real shot to be the nominee of the Democrat Party, but he cannot do it without the black vote. Does this hurt his chances to keep, he's had it, does it hurt his chances to keep the black vote?
I don't think that it does. I think that what this showcases is that Michael Bloomberg has a long way to go as it relates to moving past racial profiling. We know that he has issued several apologies. We also know that he is getting more and more endorsements from black people who matter every day.
Is it racist what he said? Because he's completely wrong. The numbers bear out that somewhere around 44% of murders were committed by whites.
No, I mean, his stats are absolutely incorrect. But these are the same stats that I've heard thrown around from people who helped to pass the crime bill, as well as people on the right who were absolutely okay with stop and frisk, including the President of the United States currently.
Do you think that was racist what he said?
I think it's ill-advised, and I think it just demonstrates who this man is. This is now a double whammy against his candidacy for the nomination. The idea that he will flip-flop on an issue this sensitive to New York right now. He'll say one thing privately, the audio is kept for 4 years, now it comes out and he's not going to apologize for what he said. And on top of that, the other thing is, doesn't matter how rich he is, Eric, you can't buy charisma, you can't buy love. He may have $54 billion, but right now he's just making a lot of media companies.
Some would say you can buy votes, though, Sebastian, and that seems to be what
if you want to be on the stage of the DNC debates, maybe, but not in America. That's not how it works.
So the other real issue here is whether or not stop and frisk work. Now, there are those who say, and Mayor Giuliani will agree, and I would tend to agree. I lived in New York City for 35 years. Stop and frisk work. Now, is it or was it racist? Was it a racist tactic that Bloomberg condoned?
It was obviously a racist tactic, and I would push against the fact that it actually worked, because I don't think that it did. Stop and frisk was one part of a 16-part strategy, so you have to extrapolate the other parts as well. Stop and frisk was not a major status in and of itself that created any level of change, and stop and frisk wasn't something that was designed solely for New York. We see this across the country. New York actually got rid of it long before a lot of other cities did. Now, Mayor Bloomberg, those 2015 comments were problematic, and I don't think that anybody, not even those on his campaign, can say that they were not. However, I do think that Mayor Bloomberg has shown signs of growth, and I think that those things will carry on throughout this campaign.
Racist or not, if it's work, listen, let me just do this right here, very quickly. I was thinking about this. To say something, to describe a perpetrator as with a color, is now deemed racist. What about describing a missing child with a color? Should we not do that anymore?
A bank robber. Seriously, you can't say it's a male, it's a Hispanic, it's white. It's insanity. It's crazy. The question is this: were these policies aimed at doing harm to minorities, or were they aimed at stopping violence, Eric? If it's about stopping violence, it's not a racist policy. We know it worked in New York. The broken window policy, the Bratton policies. You've got to stop the culture of violence. You've got to stop the jumping over the turnstiles in the metro, and that's when the culture changes.
I got to leave it right there. Massive discussion. We'd love to bring this up again with you guys real soon. Ahead in Pulse of America, politicians profiting by selling your personal information information, you won't believe how much money Mitt Romney's campaign has raked in 7 years later. It's a story you don't want to miss. Plus, quarantined on a cruise ship, I speak with an American couple stranded in Japan thanks to the coronavirus. The shocking details of how they say life has been on board the ship and what they're going to do next. So, folks, I want you to check out what I've been working on when I'm not working to bring you the best political talk show in America, this show. It's called We Hear You. It's an open mic night for you to air your grievances to the D.C. people who are supposed to represent you. Are you tired of politicians telling you what they think? Do you want to tell them exactly what you think? Bars, restaurants, towns are lining up to get our hot mics and cameras to you, the only ones that matter, the people, the voters. So let's show DC elites what you care about. We will air your comments, questions, rants, and other on TV and across many platforms, broadcast TV, digital, YouTube, podcast. This is an opportunity for you to finally be heard. Tour dates will be announced shortly at We Hear You. Politicians profiting by selling your personal information is a common practice that most donors don't know about. Michael Locklear with Sinclair station KATU in Salt Lake City, Utah, found Mitt Romney's presidential campaign continues to make millions of dollars 7 years after he lost the race.
So let's say you donate $100 to a candidate you want to win. Every campaign keeps track. They have a donor list. What you don't know is some candidates then turn around and sell your information to other candidates they want to help. And then the phone calls start.
I got a lot of mail, a lot of calls, and it became very annoying to me.
Jana Bybee donated to Mitt Romney when he was running for president. But then, years later, more mail from Republicans running for Congress.
I got solicitations from California, from Texas, Illinois, Iowa.
And you had no idea you were on any list that was being sold?
No, I had no idea.
I crunched the numbers from the Federal Election Commission and found Romney's campaign has made nearly $6 million off selling your information. Digging deeper, I found one company that bought the list from Romney's campaign and is now reselling it. The site calls donors red, white, and true blue patriots, claims it's a highly responsive list, and is full of donors who gave generously, often multiple times, because they believe in America.
This list is kind of like the gold that's stored at Fort Knox.
David Magleby, political science professor at Brigham Young University.
If I donate to a campaign, what information of mine is on this list?
It was the amount you gave and when you gave, but also who you are, where you live, your age, A bit about your demography.
Since New Year's Eve, I've been asking to interview Senator Romney. The response? He can't swing it.
That's a lot of money.
And Utah senior senator made time for us.
Always, when you have someone profiting off someone's personal information, that raises important concerns. This isn't profiting. This is an exchange of information along ideological lines that legally cannot take place without some exchange of payment.
Senator Mike Lee's list has brought in 19 grand. Who's buying? He tells us it's Romney.
I have a lot of interests that align with Mitt Romney's, and so if he wants to use them, I'm happy to let him use those. This occurs across the political spectrum. So.
He's right.
Nothing to offer.
Our investigation found Hillary Clinton has sold her list, and campaigns paid more than $8 million to reach President Barack Obama's donors.
But there will be a big debate down the road about whether this information should be disclosed.
It's something Senator Lee says his donors would not mind.
No, I think it's a pretty common understanding that when you get involved in a campaign in one way or another, you'll be in that campaign's database.
We ended up with a statement from Romney's spokeswoman saying this: under federal law, campaigns that provide lists to other organizations are restricted in doing so unless they receive appropriate compensation as designated by the FEC. List rentals are common practice, especially at the Senate and presidential levels, and making a list available is an important way to help like-minded candidates get elected. For America This Week, I'm Michael Locklear.
Turning now to the coronavirus outbreak. Joining me now is Jerry Jorgensen and her husband Mark are from Utah, and both are in quarantine off the coast of Japan aboard the Diamond Princess cruise ship. So far, many people. The number keeps rising. It started at 10, and now exceeds 175, on its way to 200. We're trying to figure out what is going on. The numbers continue to rise. Jerry, let me start with you. Just give us a sense of the feeling as these numbers grow. You're quarantined. Do you fear that you both could be next?
No, we have no fear. I mean, we have a concern. I mean, obviously we see people, leaving off the ship from our balcony. We can't go out in the halls. But, we're really not nervous. We're really not filled with anxiety. I can't speak for other people's experience. I've seen a few news clips where people are panicked and they think it's a war zone or something. It's not. We're being so well taken care of. And, this is just kind of how we roll anyway.
No, well, how you roll, Jerry, I like that. Mark, you're confined to a cabin. They tell, do I understand it right, that you get 1 hour outside? It's almost like maximum security prison, no?
Yeah. Yeah, we get our hour in the yard.
You're not fearful of contracting coronavirus, Mark?
I'm really not. The way I look at it, if we're gonna get it, we're gonna get it. Maybe that's kind of fatalistic. I don't know, but even run a ship of 3,700 people, and 150 to 200 have caught it so far, and we're just completely cut off from everybody else. Even when we go up on the deck for some fresh air, we're under strict instructions not to get within 6 feet of anyone, and to not congregate, and we're gloved and masked, and so I don't worry about it.
What do you do? What do you do all those hours that you're not out on deck, Jerry? I mean, there's a lot of time. Do you have movies? Yeah. Do you have television? Are you seeing the reports of what's going on in China?
Absolutely. We have, there's a lot of news stations on the TV. We've got tons of movies. We exercise, we read. We do have a balcony, and we're very fortunate that we can go out and get a lot of fresh air, and our room is a little bit bigger than some, so it's not like 4 walls without a window. I really feel sorry for those people.
Well, I have a doctor friend who's actually going to board a ship next week, and I'm going to ask him, and we're going to have him from the ship as well. I'm going to ask you, Mark, before we go. We only have about 30 seconds left or so. Would this discourage you from taking another cruise down the road after you get off this ship?
As a matter of fact, we've got our next one scheduled already. I've got some kids graduated from college this spring, and we're going to go on a cruise to celebrate. It's already scheduled to Alaska in May.
I've always heard once you're a cruiser, you're always a cruiser, you guys. Jerry and Mark Jorgensen from Utah, thank you very much. We'll try and check in with you again. And by the way, guys, stay safe. Wear those masks. Stay safe. Every week we honor first responders who died in the line of duty protecting our great country. Trooper Joseph Bullock was with the Florida Highway Patrol. He was shot and killed by a driver he stopped to help last Wednesday. Trooper Bullock was a U.S. Air Force veteran and worked for the Florida Highway Patrol for 19 years. He leaves behind his parents and 2 sisters. Also last week, police officer Nick O'Rear was shot and killed during a chase. Officer O'Rear was with the Kimberly, Alabama Police Department for a year and was with another police department prior to that. He is survived by his 2 children and has a 3rd one on the way. I can't explain to you how sad these stories are to me. Rest in peace, officers.
I thought the recommendation was ridiculous. I thought the whole prosecution was ridiculous, and I think it's a disgrace. No, I have not been involved with it at all.
That was President Trump talking about his involvement or lack thereof in the Justice Department's decision to revise its sentencing recommendation for the president's longtime friend, Roger Stone. Let's get right to the debate. Facing off, Democratic strategist Kevin Chavez and political commentator Sidney Watson. Sidney, I'll start with you. Your thoughts on whether or not the president should get involved in this. I mean, Roger Stone is up to, he's been convicted, so he may get as much as 9 years. They're trying to push it back a little bit.
I think when it comes to this issue, the President of the United States, in my opinion at least, probably shouldn't intervene. I know that a lot of people really want him to pardon. This is obviously a friend of his and an ally of his, but I don't necessarily think that he should get involved. Obviously, like I said, he does have the complete power to pardon him. But as far as I'm concerned, I think that it is important for the justice system to play out as it does. That being said, I don't know how accurate the justice system is and a lot of the sentences that it hands down and things like that. So I don't have a lot of faith in it, but I don't necessarily think that means that the president should, in fact, get involved.
Kevin, lying to Congress is going to get Roger Stone as much as 9 years. Meanwhile, people do it all the time. We just went through an impeachment trial where a lot of people were lying to Congress.
Well, that was one of his crimes, but he had, 6 others. And the thing is here, the DOJ is supposed to be independent. They're not supposed to take cues directly from the president about specific cases. And that's what we're seeing here.
Well, in their defense, they said they updated their sentencing request prior to President Trump making the comment on Twitter.
Right, but we saw it happen shortly after he made his comment. Then they say, oh, we're going to walk it back. And we saw 4 prosecutors actually step back from the case or recuse themselves because they didn't agree. I think what we're seeing is President Trump feels vindicated. He was acquitted, by the Senate. And I think we're going to see more of this moving forward. And it's sad for the country because if he has a willing participant like Attorney General Barr, he'll just continue to act like this. And I really
Sidney,
think
it's one of the
problem.
things presidents get to do. They get to pardon people. Bill Clinton famously pardoned Mark Rich, who was trading with Iran when it was not allowed to. It's one of the high crimes and misdemeanors. Should President Trump? I mean, look, maybe it'd be better if he just let Stone get 9 years and then pardon him.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think it's fine for him to comment on the fact that I think 9 years is excessive. I mean, he said today in another press conference that, people who are committing actual serious offenses like drug offenses and things like that get, like shorter sentences than Roger Stone is looking at. And I mean, when you really think about that, this is excessive. And so for him to step in that capacity and say, hey, maybe we should be reeling this back a little bit, I understand his personal...
Wasn't one of the articles of impeachment for Bill Clinton lying also to Congress?
Yes.
Yes.
Where is his jail time?
Well, he was president. I mean, the same benefits that
there are laws for me and laws for thee.
Yeah, it sounds like that's what's going on, and that's President Trump certainly makes that argument, and the Department of Justice with Attorney General Barr at the helm.
How many people have lied to Congress? I mean, let's look at Hillary Clinton. I mean, like Michael.
But he also did witness tampering, and he lied about the details of. That he had emails regarding the WikiLeaks involvement. He just completely lied.
But I don't think he did, though. I mean, actually, I think that's like part of this whole discussion that people are getting a little bit wrong. Is like when it really came down to it, he had no involvement with WikiLeaks whatsoever. In fact, neither of the person who is allegedly feeding him information just happened to get lucky. I mean, that was the primary.
About it. That was the thing.
But they had no real information.
Very quickly, Sidney and Kevin, a great debate, and I'd like to do it again. A little known fact about Congress: you can lie through your teeth to Congress as long as you come back and correct the record after. So all these people are on TV lying through the teeth, and you look at them and you go, they're lying. They come back, correct the record, and they're free to go. Sidney and Kevin, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ahead, join us to talk balls and strikes with Greg Miller, a national security reporter with the Washington Post. He broke the story about an encryption company the CIA purchased in order to spy on countries trying to do harm to the USA.
America, one nation, from Florida to St. Louis to Seattle. America This Week, America's fastest growing political show, delivers rough and tumble political arguments.
On the left, this new embrace of socialism.
The whole thing is ridiculous.
Hard-edged opinions.
The media let Joe Biden get away with his first big lie.
They can come after me all they want, but they're going to have to kill me if they want me to stop defending the president.
Tough topic debates.
Destabilization in the Middle East, more chaos and more terrorism.
Unless we get away from all of this hatred, we're going to destroy ourselves.
We have to solve the border problems.
The wall is a big chunk of what we're talking about.
America This Week reveals the topics and issues that pulse throughout America. Investigate stories revealing toxic forever chemicals in water supplies.
My family was poisoned. My child was poisoned. I have been poisoned.
There he is, over here, straight ahead.
Chaos at the southern border.
Go, 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 go.
Cartels, rape, gangs, and violence.
So you guys are both hitmen?
America This Week investigates the facts and the falsehoods and relentlessly seeks the truth on your behalf.
I'm Eric Bolling. Join me for a fascinating look at America This Week. Let's talk balls and strikes. We're joined now by Greg Miller, the national security reporter for the Washington Post. Always Washington Post. Love you guys. Thank you for joining us yet again. Greg, tell us about this story. I'm fascinated by this story. Tell us about Crypto AG.
So this is, I've been covering national security for a long time in this town, and this is one of the most astonishing stories I've ever been a part of. It's a story of a secret CIA operation that carried on for more than half a century. The CIA secretly bought a company in Switzerland in the 1970s that was the world's leading supplier of crypto equipment, encryption devices to the rest of the world. And then it sat back, it rigged those machines so that all of those countries, all of their communications were exposed to U.S. intelligence agencies. The United States sat back and listened for decade after decade, and nobody really knew about the full extent of this operation until now.
How did you find out?
So we can't go too far in sort of describing how this came about, but we ended up in possession of some pretty critical documents. The internal CIA history. The CIA wrote its own history of this operation. It was sort of so proud of it that it does that. And then it shared it with the German intelligence services because they were partners on this operation. The Germans read this and they were like, oh, you jerks, CIA, you're trying to take all the credit. They wrote their own version of the history, and it is through looking at those documents, we got possession of those documents, comparing notes, that we were able to construct this amazing story.
How did they keep it secret for 50 years?
Well, at times there was a lot of suspicion, actually, and that's one of the really interesting things. There was always sort of smoke over this company, a lot of suspicion.
May I ask you who bought the encryption services of crypto?
Oh yeah, so more than 120 countries around the world, including allies, including adversaries, most of Latin America, almost every country in the Middle East, some countries in Europe, Spain, Italy, Ireland, bought these devices, all without knowing that they were rigged.
Do we feel, or did the CIA, is there any indication that we got some good intel on what they found from selling this information to people that we were adversaries with?
Oh yeah, the documents are full of examples of global events and crises where this capability proved pretty important for the United States, including the Iran hostage crisis. Iran was a huge customer of crypto machines, so the Americans were listening to the Iranian regime throughout that crisis.
Before I say I love this idea, is it illegal?
Well, I mean, in espionage, nothing really is illegal. I mean, the CIA is, is a weird entity. It's an agency that resides in the United States where it's bound by American laws here, but it goes abroad, and its mission is to break other countries' laws and to steal their secrets, and that's sort of one of the rules of espionage. I'm going to go on a limb
and say I like what they did. I like the method. Before I let you go, just about a minute or so, tell me about Huawei, the Chinese firm that may be doing something similar. Is it not?
Well, we don't know. I mean, and that's one of the important, I think, what makes this story relevant. I mean, this is a story about a company that was finally sold in an operation that ended 2 years ago. But, I mean, there are lots of suspicions about other companies right now, including Huawei, this Chinese telecommunications giant that is...
We're concerned, so our audience understands, we're concerned that it's a telecom giant that's going to be involved in 5G networks globally. And we're concerned that they may be able to steal information.
Right. The UK is turning right now to Huawei to build out its 5G network. Is that a safe thing to do? I think a lot of people in U.S. intelligence agencies think the answer is no. This is a Chinese entity. There's a strong chance that the Chinese government is working with this company to infiltrate those devices and to compromise them for Chinese advantage.
Well, Greg Miller, we really appreciate you. Would love to get you back as you find more. I'm fascinated by this stuff. Thank you, Greg.
Thank you.
All right, that's a wrap from the D.C. Swamp Scared, our guest right there. Thanks for watching, folks. I'm Eric Bolling. See you next week. I'm going to go bye. I love this. Bye, bye, bye.